Hi, Shannon and Diana.
Good to
Hey.
see you.
Yeah, good to see you too.
Hi there.
Hey. Hi, Diana. So I'll get started here in a second. We're going to go long. There's a lot of data. I've been trying to wrap my mind around what just happened with the election. I think I stayed up until like 2 a.m. I don't know about you guys. Trying to figure out what's going on.
I went to sleep. With as much as they were flip-flopping around, these were the results in 2020, 2021, 2022. This is this state, this is that state, this is the House, this is the Senate, this is the presidential, blah, blah, blah. I was like, I don't know what's going on. I'm going to bed.
Yeah, it's fun. I don't think it changes our predictions of what's happening because the causal reasons are much larger than who's in office.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting. Hi, Andrew.
Hey, how are you?
Hey, pretty good. Who do you represent? Who are you with?
So I'm with Schmoop University.
Oh, okay, good. Okay, good. And Diana, remind me who you're with.
I'm with Safari with Shannon.
Okay, good. And there's Craig Osborne. Hi. I don't know if we'll get that many people today. We forgot that it was the day after the election, and it's like mass freak out there. A lot of schools are closed. Hi, Snow White. It's been many years since I heard from you, Snow.
Yeah, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. It's good to hear from you.
You too. I saw your name. I was like, oh, I haven't seen her in forever.
I know, forever and ever. And hello, David Allen. Not sure how many people we'll have today. Hi, Alex. But feel free to pipe up, or I'll try to watch questions, but there's so much data that you might as well just pipe up and ask questions. I think everybody's unmuted, or you can mute yourself and then unmute if your background gets too loud. To go ahead and ask questions, but I'll get started now, okay? All right, so this is Learning Council's State of K12 EdTech report off of 2024, going into 2025, and all the way through for some parts of it through 2030. This is our predictions, our analysis, our mathematical modeling, and what we recommend for sales and marketing priorities. That's at the very end of this. So if you can all see my slides, I'm going to get going here. First of all, I'm Leilani Cawthon. I run and own the Learning Council. I wrote a book. You can see it behind me, The Consumerization of Learning, which is picking up in sales now. I have all these other publishers trying to come at me saying, hey, your predictions from 2017 are all coming true. What's up with that? I'm writing another book right now. Shannon, it's something I'm going to want to talk to you about, given what you're into right now with the human intelligence movement. I'm also a strategist, and I've been in news media for like 35 years. So I know research and run a team of researchers. So we have 310,000 readers. We do a newsletter once to twice a week, depending on what time of the year it is. If we're running events, we do about 24 events a year. They're in field, in region events. I'll show you the list for 2025 later on. And I have a lot of podcast followers. We've got a history of writing about what to do in terms of being organized as educators. Our latest one was the schooling metamorphosis one. These are all on our site, by the way, and they're like a continuum. They sort of take you through a maturity scale. And the maturity scale, and I want to show you this before we get into all the data, because it really sort of puts into play like where we're at in the United States. You know, you guys all remember the device rollouts, and then 2020 that took off. And then people argue about the teaching and learning methods and the models, and people are sort of using Word documents and things like that. Then there's mass training, then there's new apps and retirement of apps. Then eventually someone takes an inventory and says, well, we have 42 different math apps, maybe we should consolidate. Then there's real attention on access and resource equity, also safety. Services disaggregation, where they start to go, well, maybe we could also do some things differently. And then they mature to wanting to personalize for every single student. That's the front end of the market right now. They're at that point, and you'll understand the reasons why later, but they're not all the way up to the top end here where they're becoming experiential centers, which we talked about in our special reports. These are the three things I'm going to take you through today. The market conditions, why they are what they are, and then our recommendations for you guys in sales and marketing for the coming couple of years. So as we look at all the trend lines, these are the trend lines we analyzed and threw into the pot for our mathematical modeling. So the student attrition is huge. It's a 10 to 20% year over year losses since the pandemic. It was higher during the pandemic. It's gone down a little bit, but it's still really high. Absenteeism, you know, Los Angeles Unified has a 40% rate of absenteeism. It's just off the charts, and a lot of the big cities do. But there's some rural places like in New Mexico where it's like 70%. So, and then there's of course the teacher shortage and the Edtech spend change and all the culture shifts. So if you weigh all these things together, they sort of give you like a picture of where things are really going. And what we have to tell you today is that 2025 will be like 2019 without the pandemic coming right on its heels. So if you've done well in 2024, just so you know, 2024 was the biggest drop in spend we've ever seen. But that was because of the big the pandemic stimulus bump. It was all expected. It just fell off way quicker than we thought it would. We were predicting flat to slightly up in 2024. We were wrong. It was 20% down. So if you survived well in the last year or moderately okay, you should be okay from here on out. So the spend that actually traditional schools will be doing will be especially high in digital curriculum. The micro schools will be doing way more spend, interactive whiteboards, some computing devices, but most likely that'll go through retail because it's all going to be a disaggregated market. That's going to start accelerating. You'll see the numbers here in a second. I'm not going to go through every single thing I wrote on every single slide, but you will all have these slides, and this is being recorded. It will be up in nostory.com on our event page there. All right. So the spend in billions in EdTech, like I said, 2024 has already been the biggest spending reduction year on record, right? Notice the orange boxes. I want to explain those before I go any further. That's the dispersal of spend away from traditional public and private schools, which are a lot of them are networks, into micro schools and online schools and little tiny things happening everywhere all over the country. Especially with the move into the vouchers, right? So there's a lot of money in vouchers. I'll talk about that too. 2025 may see another 15 to 20% drop. I doubt it now, but it will look like it's dispersing. So as you look at the market, you're going to see a lot of your big traditional public districts just clam up. They won't be traveling. They'll cut spend left, right, and center. all those big whales you're going to see making huge sacrifices. I've been getting calls from the biggest districts. I remember Broward called me a couple of months ago and said we got to cut like 72 schools. And it's a painful, painful moment for them. So moving forward, the market will be that dispersal into smaller entities. You also see states making big moves in online schools. Vouchers could be seizing as much as 40% of the market's total spend by 2027. 40% of $850 billion a year is not small. So the bigger companies that we talk to, they're all making big moves to consumerize themselves and make sure that they have sort of a consumer offer that will also network through some of the states. They're going to offer voucher money directly for resources spent by homeschoolers. So you can spend your money on things instead of a school. The consumer spend is already $9 billion more than all schools put together spend. It's been sort of in, mini math apps, calculator apps, various and sundry things that a lot of traditional schools don't know anything about because they're not aimed at them. They're aimed at the homeschooling game. But you're going to see even more of that. That's now accelerating again. It was shrinking slightly during 21, 22. All right, so these are the categories that have, from our 2024 survey, have school districts intending to spend. And this was, our survey was not just traditional public schools and districts. We included charters and micro schools and some of the privates, not very many. They don't respond as well. There's still going to be some confusion. This isn't how much they're purchasing. This is who's going to do any purchasing in that category. We don't anticipate computing devices to be off the charts. It's pure replacement only and partial replacement in many cases because they're losing kids in traditional publics. So you won't have the sweeping gains you had during the pandemic. We do think interactive whiteboards and tables are going to do really well, mostly because you have to create an environment now that is so enticing that kids won't be absent. It has to be almost theatrical to go into a classroom now. Like there's a reason to be there. And that's the same thing happening with everything else that's going on, like robotics and drones and esports. You will see courseware as the biggest spend category. I'll show you those numbers in a second. So the year-over-year spend, 2024, this is where the drop was. If you experienced anywhere in the percentage I'm talking to you about right now, then you know that you've already experienced what was the worst of it. You possibly experienced a little bit going into 2025, but it'll start turning around after that. So courseware, slight drop, 15%. Networking technologies lost 27. There was a huge thing on in the networking monies, the going on and who's going to spend on what during the middle of the year. So that had an effect. Artificial intelligence off the charts. Courseware for supplemental, which is an early part of the maturity scale, still off the charts. You're going to see a lot of holographic come in. This is coming in from overseas, new companies, and also microfarming. Those are going to be coming in, but it's such a small percentage to start with. So those numbers look, the percentages look big, but they're actually starting at a tiny percentage. So those are your loss points. We asked teachers, just as long as we're talking about AI, I stuck this in here. This is part of our national tour. We talk about this. We also talk about the 9 types of human intelligence in every city. What our survey showed is this is the teachers' awareness right now. 51% were not aware of AI at all. 29% say they understand computer vision image generation, which is really interesting to me. I thought it would be more higher in generative than it was in image. Than all the other sort of main types of AI here. So I think that AI has a long way to go to push in, but there is money flowing now towards AI products. So the EdTech category spend in 2025, this is our prediction, is 5.1 billion in the hardware and networking side, 10.2 billion, I'm sorry, 10.2 billion hardware networking side, 5.1 billion in major systems. Those are your LMSs, student information systems, the learning object repositories, those kinds of guys. And then in the, although learning object repositories sort of they slide into the curriculum side too. And Shannon, I'm just saying that because I know you're on here. And then curriculum is the heavy spend. Now, this is completely different pie chart than we used to show 4 years ago. It was all really hard, a lot more hardware networking stuff. It's all slid. in the last couple of years. So anyway, so I don't need to talk on and on about that, but you understand what I'm saying with the spend. To give you a comparison, I pulled up the 2019 going into 2020 data points on spend at this is the district level, or I'm sorry, this is digital curriculum spend, district and school level. So second column is school level, first column is district level, what the average spend is on digital curriculum. This is what you can expect in terms of the numbers going into this next year. So if you're somewhere in the dollar value that fits against their 3,000 other apps and systems, you understand where they're coming from, why they're going to be talking about retiring certain numbers of apps and softwares. Other ones are not anywhere near the spend yet, so they'll be buying more. But I want you to notice that there's school level spend. There's way more schools than there are districts. You're going to have to pay attention to the principals now a lot more than just the districts, because they have discretionary spend and they will do independent spend on apps and things that the schools don't do. Okay, this is the major systems budgets, and you can see the difference between the districts and the schools in terms of what they spend. And expect that again in 2025, same numbers. Okay, so this is our prediction through 2030 of what's going to happen in the market after we ran all the mathematical modeling. So public, traditional, and charter school enrollment, whether on campus or online, is predicted to be at or below 50% by 2030. When we show this to school, when we showed it to schools in the last, 5 cities I was in this fall, people are nodding their heads. They're, they know it's accelerating. They realize all the kids they're losing to attrition. They think it's all private schools. It's not. The growth is much heavier in homeschooling than it is in privates. They think it's going to go to charters, which is still public, and part of that is true, but not as true as it's going to go to homeschooling. There's a lot to know about why this is happening. The only place that sort of gave us a lot of pushback was California, Milpitas School District, because they don't believe it. They just think there's no way it's going to happen. They're going to stop it. There was board members in the room, and some superintendents. 2 of the superintendents thought, yeah, you're probably right. The other ones were like, no, we can stop that. I don't think it's stoppable. I'm just going to tell you the mathematical modeling is true. Something's going on, and today we're going to talk about what's really going on here. Okay, so the biggest cliff year for their loss, which is why 2025 is going to be a really big battle for everybody in EdTech, is next year. Next year, as you can see, is the cliff year where they will see so much loss in students that they're going to see a lot more reorganization, even than you saw this year. But then it'll start evening off in terms of like being sort of predictably less loss year over year. So next year is an 8% loss, dwindling to 5 or 6 or 4. Okay. School closure rates, just to give you some idea, this was 2021, 22, 22, 23, and then what happened this year? 5,000 schools closed. There's almost 1 million kids were displaced to either go to, longer bus rides or find a different school. The shakeup that's actually causing, just FYI, is that those displaced students didn't necessarily arrive back at traditional schools. So they were being displaced because there had to be consolidation. So there's already attrition, right? So then when they had to consolidate, they had more attrition. So that's what's actually happening in a lot of places. So here are the top line data points. I won't read all these to you, but you know about the teacher shortage, you know about the absenteeism. The homeschooling growth is 51 to 65% year over year. This is their biggest growth. School vouchers, 9 more states just had them on the ballot. I haven't checked them all this morning. I meant to do that, but this is a really big deal. I don't think Kentucky passed it, so I think we're good there. But the achievement declines, everyone talks about those. Administrators are saying that, they have 41% now have mindset to affect some transformation. This is the second to the last one, to move away from traditional school whole group manufacturing pattern. That is a clue as to where I'm going to take you with this whole discussion that we're going to have today. And again, anyone who wants to pipe up and mention something, unmute yourself momentarily and say so. Okay. So the top line data points across the industry, right? So all learning are these. This is sort of the envelope that we look at K-12 with. We go, okay, what's happening in the greater scene? And then we go look at K-12. We don't try to like just be within our little echo chamber. That doesn't do anybody any good, because if you don't understand outside trends, you don't know the pressure that's really on K-12. So of course, 63% of internet users have engaged in online learning because of its flexibility. This is a high percentage of the market. This is happening as Gen Y, millennials, these guys, Alpha Gen mature, right? They're coming up and they've been using devices their whole life. It's a different thing than the earlier generations. 57 million users that have participated in online learning platforms by 2027. That's the prediction. Online learning is also 40 to 60% quicker. People aren't observing this very well, but that's one of the biggest reasons for absenteeism. They think, oh, well, the pandemic, people were at home. They think they can still be at home. Parents are arguing with us about it. Why can't we just, get on the video conference again and come into the classroom? And schools are like, no, you can't. It was seat time. Don't you know anything? So that's what's happening with them. But parents don't care, right? Kids don't care. They don't get it, right? They don't care about those laws. Why don't you change those laws? So this pressure is just going to keep building. And again, I won't go over every single one of these, but these are the opinions from our surveys of the teachers and administrators. 87% of teachers are overwhelmed by the number of expectations on their practice. Let me explain that to you, because I've been talking about this in every city we go into, and that is this. 15 to 40% of every classroom you walk into now has that number of kids in 4 to 5, 2 to 5, right? Grade levels behind, sometimes more. So if you're trying to teach them in a 7th grade class to write an essay and you've got people that can't read, they're at the 2nd grade level, they're not there, right? They're not with you in the whole group pattern. They don't move on the manufacturing line like the other kids. Then the rest of that 15 to 40% is foreign language kids. You've got schools right now in New York that have 900 out of 1,000 of the kids are brand new to the country. There's places, well, Salt Lake City told us they're teaching to 132 languages. So this is not easy for a big school to do, or a small school to do. It's almost impossible. So if you have a teacher who's used to homogeneity, moving the group along, yes, some of them are going to be brighter and some of them not so bright, but they're generally going to pace together. And now you've got people who are wildly off the pattern. It's not possible to do the same type of job that you were doing before. You're in a mad scramble to keep those 8 or so kids with the pattern. So 80% of teachers believe AI will cause more easy personalization. That's their number one answer. But it will eventually take their jobs. There's some teachers that were responding to us saying, yeah, but it'll also create new jobs for the education industry. And I firmly believe that. 51% of teachers are still teaching traditional methods, a lot of verbal instruction. There's nothing wrong with that, but that's not the expectation of Generation Alpha. Gen Alpha doesn't like to be interfaced with humans that much. They'd rather text. They don't even want mom calling them on the phone. They don't understand why mom just shouldn't text, right? Like they don't even see the phone as a phone. It's really a text and surfing machine, right? So the difference is in those patterns of what's going on with Alpha. I'll talk about a little bit later. It's been a great workshop in every one of our cities with our events, just talking about the Alpha generation and how different they are to try to teach. So parents are questioning, complaining about curriculum. That's very true. And then, of course, this bottom one, the number one hurdle with teachers and administrators is their traditional belief about what education looks like. They're not willing to change. They think they are. We talk a lot about innovation in the edtech space, but really they're looking at you, and this is where I'm inviting you to help the market change, and let's all come together and hold hands, is they look at you as a point solution. You are a product. You are not an innovation of the environment, the entire thing, right? Like let's change the entire pattern of the flow and the work and all of it. You're a product, and that has to change if we want to gain the percentage of spend that should be correct for edtech, rather than school districts still overspending on staffing when maybe that wasn't the wisest thing to do during the pandemic, because they were going to lose those teachers anyway. Okay, so data points, the social differences in terms of the social decay. So 28% of Americans, only 28 have confidence in public schools. This is down 4% in the last 2 years. But trust is not just collapsing in education, it's collapsing across all industries. And the reason why this was number one in our survey is common courtesy in communications is almost gone. People are ghosting everybody. Nobody's returning phone calls. They're marking email as spam when it isn't spam. They're doing a lot of obnoxious things, and they're not responding. They're just not there. And that is having a huge effect in ed tech. I mean, ask any company in this field if they can get in, and they're almost all telling me, no, I can't get in. And it's worse than that, because I used to have relationships in this school and that district and this one over here, and those persons retired, and now I can't get a hold of anybody else new. So it's really, it's having a really dire effect on sales. And then you've got, 57% of teachers actually citing that loss of common courtesy in the classroom too. So this is, fights and discipline issues and all those things. Then you've got this high pricing inflation that hit schools. Nobody thought they would be spending 3 to 4 to 5 times more on groceries for school lunches than they were, and a lot more on gas. Those were not in the budget. So a lot of that happened this last year. So 45% of teachers and administrators cite as a major social effect that rise of AI and a new interest in co-intelligence. They want to know, what do we have to be as humans in order to counter and balance what's going to come down the pike in AI. So we're doing a lot of conversation at Learning Council about what is the convergence of the various types of AI. What does it mean? What are the 9 human intelligences? What do we have to do to raise them? Since the Sputnik era, we've been focused mostly on math and language, but there's other forms of human intelligence. And then 84% of teachers cite as a major or some social effect this alpha gen issue of they don't want face-to-face, they want to be on the screen. And we've had teachers tell us, oh, no, my kids want to be face-to-face. They don't want to be on the screen all day long. When I query that, which I just did at the Dallas event, we had an administrator bring in a panel of kids, and they started talking about, we don't want to be on tech all the time. We're on tech everywhere, when we're not in school anyway. But when I queried them on what kind of tech they were talking about, they had not actually been exposed to the high value digital curriculum that's evident in the market now. They've been exposed, and there's one student even said this, exposed to technology that was poorly organized by the teacher for that class, and hard to navigate. And so they didn't want to do it. And it was all flat digital text, right? It wasn't like this widgety gamified, choose an avatar body and play the levels of math and, that kind of stuff. It wasn't the good stuff. So when you look under the hood for what's really going on with them, is they're expecting quality UI UX. They're expecting to have an experience in the digital realm. They're not expecting to have something digitized. So this is a real key thing for ed tech companies. And then, of course, immigration and safety is the number one concern. It's also the number one concern for every superintendent that responded. This is the number one thing on their plate right now. That's all they care about. Okay. So highest pressures from the year prior, these were the ones. They held true this year. Administrators, all they worry about right now is, besides the safety thing, is the recruiting of teachers. And then teachers are very much focused on the social emotional wellness, because they're seeing this drop in common courtesy and communications. They're seeing acting out, they're seeing discipline issues, they're seeing stuff they've never seen before. Okay, so we asked the teachers, what is your number 1, number 2, number 3 challenges? These are the top number ones by percentage. Of course, absenteeism, attrition, student discipline. Number 2, teacher training. It's a big deal for them. They feel like they're behind the 8 ball all the time, right? A lot of teachers, they're like, they can never catch up to understanding what they're supposed to be doing. And then number 3, the high number of foreign language. This is the first year that the foreign language student issue on a weighted average overshot everything else. So that's a big thing to know. And then which priority is the best to prepare for the future? The number 1 priority, this is from the teacher side, is to stop lecturing. They realize they can't be the source of knowledge and verbalize to alpha generation. The verbalization of knowledge is sort of like a weird alien world for the alpha gen. And then the number 2 best priority is They want to see school-wide and extended school networks of subject-specific teacher groups. This is something for districts. This is to know. This is something I'm talking to the state level DOEs about. Like, listen, I don't know if you know this, but you're going to have to create a matrix. You will not get the teachers you need for science out in the middle of nowhere, but you might have a language teacher out there that you could share with a big district in downtown something something city, and they could share back and forth. You need to start thinking in terms of matrix digital for how you allocate staff. You can't keep thinking monolithically in buildings only. You're going to have some kids who can physically be in front of that teacher out in the middle of nowhere, but then all the rest of them somewhere else are going to be digitally, they're going to be on video conference and vice versa. So that's the future. And then what are the core assumptions that are being overlooked? So we're having fun time with surveys this last summer, and we asked leading questions. We love doing that. It's very fun for researchers to do that. They argue amongst themselves, doing that kind of work. But we asked leading questions. We're like, what do you think is being overlooked? Do you think this is being overlooked maybe by upper management in your school or your district? So 75% grading and class management burden. This is not being looked at close enough for how much is on the back of the teacher. 70%, the assumption that instructional minutes mean time spent with the teacher. It doesn't in law in any state that we saw. It means time spent receiving any instruction. This is a very key point to what the future looks like to us at Learning Council. And then groupings by age and grades rather than by ability or task, 68%. They think that's, being overlooked. And the reason they say that is, like I said, that 15 to 40% of the kids in the classroom are off grade pattern. They're either way behind or some of them are slightly ahead. Like you've seen the kid in 7th grade who's reading at the 12th grade level, right? They're already bored. The groupings by age is something that doesn't make sense to this generation anymore. And instructional design burdens on the teacher, of course. I'm a huge advocate, and I say this in every city that I speak in. Hey, why are we doing that? Like, we didn't used to make them all write their own textbooks, and yet now every teacher in America has to write every single lesson plan. I don't get it. Like, why are we doing that? Why don't we hand them their curriculum? They can tweak it, but it's all built. It's timed out for how long it should take, so you can watch the time sequence of kids moving across it. But why are we doing that? I mean, I know teachers, they like to be in charge of everything. But then when it really comes down to it, 65% of them are answering, hey, I really don't want to have to do this anymore, especially with, academic standards changing every time I blink an eye. So also the assumption that seat time laws contain innovation, constrain innovation of schedules. They don't. Georgia's been finding this out. Parts of California have been finding this out. And then the assumption that the differentiation or individualization within typical by age or breakout is authentically personalizing. I almost got, I got shocked by a person out in California who said, oh yeah, we do pace-based learning. And I said, well, it's not really pace-based. Explain to me how you're really doing that. Because if it's within the grade, within the class, it's bracketed by age and by the time of the block schedule. And you have to stay with the group. So I don't understand how you can do pace-based within that thing. Explain that to me, because I don't get it. And no one can really explain it to me. So people really think that they're personalizing learning within the current context. This generation has figured out, and teachers have figured out, they're not doing that because they're bracketed by a system that is built to keep you in a group by age. Okay, I could beat that to a dead horse. Sorry about that. So with little difference in the last 3 years, and in fact, this is also from areas of innovation they were trying. This is what schools have been trying. They've been trying, innovation, including themes like STEM and all the other things. They've been trying curriculum innovation as the highest level, and they'll continue to do that. We're telling you all the way through 2030, that's where all the innovation is going to happen. I even have school districts actually talking to me about, like, why do we focus on math, language, and science and history and social studies? Why aren't we innovating even at the subject level? Why aren't we cross-curricular and everything? Why don't we do project-based for everything? And they're right. You're going to see that level of discussion in the next 3 years. And then they try cultural change. Let's have more discipline. Let's have, like, truant officers and those kinds of things. And let's do a lot more coming togetherness and things like that. So there's a lot of culture shift. They try that. And then they try a lot of implementation supports and technology. Some of them have gone to 4 to 8 weeks, flex hours. They're trying to redefine their teacher roles. They're trying to do, maybe they allow another form like a charter to grow out of the district. They're trying to do segmentation, right? Competency or interest a little bit. Definitely not breaking up the whole old style traditional model. And then to student roles and then all the way down to marketing. Some of the biggest districts, by the way, are all building marketing departments. It's very interesting. None of those are really working though on a mass scale. So let me talk to you now about the reasons why everything's different. So the big why, when we actually looked at all the vectors and the mathematical models, the big why here is that the internet is actually killing the whole group model. And if you really think about it, there's very little you do anywhere in life that's whole group model except school. It was built that way more than, well, almost 2.5 centuries ago, because there was a need to sort of homogenize the melting pot that was America. We still have that need. I don't believe that need will ever go away. We need social melting potness, but we don't necessarily have to execute the same way we always have been. So the research is indicating now that the whole group model is not fitting with the culture exactly perfectly. There's something off about it when you can get everything else in life completely customized. I've said this many times. You guys have all heard me say this probably. If you can get a box anywhere in the world within 24 hours, you can definitely have better logistics and schooling. That's what FedEx can do. Amazon can get you a cool box of ice cream in most major cities on your doorstep within an hour. That's real customization. That's like straight to you. They'll also, the internet knows every time you say anything in front of your phone, it starts showing you ads for whatever you were talking about. Like if you say the word Disney in front of your phone, it'll start showing you Disney ads for the next week and a half. So there's a need to understand what's really going on here is a drive towards personalization that's truly personalized for that individual, for the level that they're at, not let's try to remediate for them because they're in the 8th grade, but they're in the 3rd grade language, right? Let's put them in the level of course that they're actually in and let them pace from there. So the form follows function. You've heard us talk about this a lot, but we were in conversations about this in almost every city this fall. We have a discordant structure. This is the number one thing that leaders will understand when you talk to them about it. The structure is the manufacturing model. We all known this for a long time. And schools need to rethink form the same way Uber rethought form and Amazon and what's going on with esports right now. The form follows the function, and the function of today's society is the internet. The internet is a one-to-one mesh network. It is not a bureaucratic structure. It is not a manufacturing line. And when we come to looking at schools, we realize, hey, this could be a lot more efficient. What does it look like? So the national discourse, this is the number one thing the reason for everything happening the way that it is. And now you understand as I'm saying this, why the predictions are what they are through 2030. It's not because schools are bad or teachers are doing a poor job. It's not any of that. It's all structure. It's the expectation of extreme personalization. It's the form of execution. Not these people are bad. These schools are great. I know so many leaders that are just awesome people. But there's a desire for something different. It's a form following function issue. The same way that when we move from the agrarian age and we move to the industrial age, the structure of society caused skyscrapers in these big cities, right? People left the farms, went to the cities. Now we have an out migration happening all over the country. We're moving to just rearrange ourselves, just like the internet has rearranged how you can have point-to-point communications. So number 2, the biggest reason why all this is happening is the alpha generation is very different. So I'm not going to read through this whole slide for you, but they spend 50% of their waking life on screens. They will follow small scale influencers. They don't really like the big scale influencers. In fact, if you get over 15,000, they don't like you anymore. It's a very interesting rearrangement of attention. That tells you a lot about what just happened. Well, with the election, right? Like what's going on with politics tells you a lot about what's going on with this generation, the ones that are their parents. So the result is because they also see themselves as competing with all of humanity, all 7 billion of us on the internet, they have a very different perception of self-identity. They feel that they have to be something significant on the internet and they don't pay as much attention or a different kind of attention in the physical environment than previous generations did. They have an identity crisis. There's a lot of friction in this generation with earlier generations. But what it all comes down to is that bottom paragraph there, the devaluation of formality. They don't value the formality because they're used to texting, which is like abbreviated words. It's very informal. There's not even punctuation in most cases. So you have a very formal earlier world and now a very informal mesh network world that's screen centric. And you can take these kids and you put them into a class and you're supposed to pay attention for X number of minutes. And their minds are set to scroll, reset, scroll, reset, scroll, reset. They can't do it. They literally need a boot camp to understand how to listen to a human for that long. So it's a very different thing, and it's having a huge effect on the success of traditional education, especially lecture style. All right, so 3, 4, 5, I'll go over these really quickly. The political division, we know that. A reverse of geographics, that's the out migration I've talked to. My sister's in real estate. She'll sell any home quicker than any other home if it also has a mother-in-law quarters on it, or if it's multifamily in any way. We're moving to almost the opposite of everybody lived on farms together, multiple families in the agrarian age, and then we moved and we all cubicalized ourselves into a million different houses and apartments and places. That trend is starting to reverse. We're wanting to be human with each other, multi-generation, neighborhood-wise. It's going to create a huge pattern shift in how we live coming into the next 10, 20 years. So also you have this reverse of demographics. All right. So K12 consumer expectations. This is something that I talk about at the state level, a little bit with the districts level, but this will help you understand what's going on with the consumer side and also what to do with products. So the current expectation is misdefined by most educators as wanting a different school. The expectation is not just which school, it's why. So why do we have to school? Why are we doing it? I can learn to build a house on YouTube, like by myself, just watching multiple videos, and you can, right? People are aware of this. They can learn how to knit. I learned how to crochet watching YouTube videos. So there's that. What they want are these 4 boxes. They want flexibility. They don't understand the all day, every day, got to be there every day, the busing schedule, blah, 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 the regimentation. They want partial or even ad hoc affiliation. They want schools, they want tutors, they want courseware and flexible time and space. They're shopping right now. This whole parent generation right now is shopping. They're shopping for a lifestyle, not which school. This is just a fact. You look at all the data of who's ending up where, and then you see that. They're also looking for effort evaluation and not grading. They're not looking for comparison against others. They're looking for comparison metrics against themselves. I will challenge you that AI is going to start to pay attention to this, because if you could evaluate a student for who they are and what they're capable of doing, and then run metrics against their own skill level, it's a totally different game than the bell curve against other humans. And that's actually what people want. And also safety. This is like what's really driving people right now. And when I look at safety, I also think about the valuation of human family. We learned during the pandemic to be together, and we sort of looked at each other and said, hey, I miss you. Who are you? What's your middle name again? So we got really excited about that. We're like, oh, we should actually be together more often. All right, so figuring this all out, when we looked at it, we said, it won't be the more of the same. Where's it going to go? And so we pulled up this Steve Jobs quote, which we love. Some people say, this is what he said, give the customers what they want, but that's not my approach. Our job is to figure out what we're going to do to what they're going to want before they do. I think Henry Ford once said, if I'd asked customers what they wanted, they would have told me a faster horse. I don't need to read you this whole slide, but it's wonderful. People don't know what they want until you show it to them. Our task is to read things that are not yet on the page. Okay, so that's really what we need to be doing with EdTech right now, is going, okay, if we watch all these trends and what's going on with this generation and the out-migration and the spend and the change and the attrition and everything else, and what Leilani is saying, what she's pointed out to us, where's it going? What's going to happen, right? you kind of get a feel for it. So we think, and we've been leading this project for a while, and we'd love you to get involved in it, hold hands with us to go forward with it, is that the future is not this manufacturing model. We think it's a flex model. We think it's a mesh network, and it's going to use resources in a totally different way. It's going to use software in a different way. It's going to affect your licensing patterns. It will center on time AI. It'll probably flank generative AI, recommendations engine AI, and all the other AIs, but it's going somewhere in that direction. All right, so let's give you the advices for Edtech sales. Accelerated dispersal of the market. So get involved with the charter schools, get involved with the private schools, get involved with micro schools. Essentially this whole market is seeking what it's going to be. That's already happened in most other industries. You've watched what's happened to retail. You're watching the collapse of commercial real estate in every city in America. It's not coming back. You're also watching big changes in shipping and logistics and all that kind of stuff, right? So what I want to make sure you're aware of is that the rockiness of this road is not going to get easy for a few more years. It's going to be hard. But if you understand where it's going, you can help schools and districts sort of arrive there. So this last bullet point is, who the winners are going to be. We think AI is going to continue to drive everything. Glad they came along when they did. Anything experiential that you can't buy for homeschool is going to drive attendance and avert attrition. It's a huge game changer for schools, and they need to get busy with that. And then in any other sort of nifty tech that you can bring in, even underwater drones like St. Vrain does it out in Colorado. Okay, so the imperative for you as an EdTech company is to think about, are you marketing or are you just producting? I made up that word and somebody told me I have a right to make up words. Producting means it's you, right? It's your house. You're talking about your product and your features and benefits and maybe some discrete customer data and how they're using it, and worried about your direct competition only. Your public relations stories are about you. You're measuring yourself by your web clicks and your leads. You probably profiled your buyer by a single title. Big mistake. Don't do that anymore. The future is understanding the entire metropolis of awareness of the customer set, which is not just the buyer person. Definitely, it's not a procurement manager, right? That's not the buyer. It's the curriculum director. It's the chief academic officer, the tech directors, and the smaller districts is superintendent themselves. Sometimes teachers influence, sometimes a whole group of them influence. But your customer has to look at you in the context of everything else that they're doing, right? Like, how does this come fit into my puzzle? Oh, the thing's taking me somewhere new. I get to be something new. They're interested in that conversation right now, very interested in that conversation. So you have to profile everybody in the game. You have to sort of look at their money issues. You have to look at their spend in other industries. Like, there's a reason they're telling you there's no money. There isn't no money, by the way. There's plenty of money in this market. Well, they'll say things like, yeah, cost of food is way up and gas and the busing and blah, blah. They're right about that. If you're not taking that into account in terms of like what's happening out there, then you don't understand your customer. They also have all this outside pressure. The states are beating up on them. Why are your scores down? Why is everybody leaving the schools? What's happening? Okay, good. Well, you guys are failing. I'm just going to stand up a bunch of charters next to you or at the state level. And it's a scary scene right now, but they've got all of that going on. Then they've got the leadership vision where some of the leaders will focus only on one thing, right? Like, let's worry about absenteeism. Let's send out people into the social sphere and visit mom and dad in every place where there's, a kid. Let's do these things. Those aren't addressing the issue of why someone's not motivated to come there, right? Like, okay, yeah, they got a lot of issues in their life and, they didn't have a ride today and that other stuff. I get that. But it didn't used to be this way. There's a cultural shift here and you need to understand what's going on. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about what technology can do. So that's our imperative. Start marketing. Don't be producting. Okay, so these are the other things you can do to meet the challenges. So number one is gain leverage. Don't try to go it alone. Don't try to be like a standalone company out in the middle of nowhere. You need to be doing things that are appealing, that are saying, here's a big shift into the future, and let's all go there and hold hands together. Now, for a little while, that was like blended learning stuff, right? That was online learning conferences. That's shifting. But those things where you can hold hands and make your money go farther, that's really cool, right? Because that's good for you, it's good for them. Everybody, it's muscle, everybody moving together, that kind of thing. You also should really think about what's going to go down with big conferences in the next year. I'm just telling you. We saw pain during the pandemic. We're going to see way more pain in the next couple of years because travel budgets are just being cut left, right, and center. I had districts all over California tell me their administrators never travel. And if they allow somebody to go, you got to put in a requisition 3 months in advance, and you got to have it approved. And only one of you can go, or maybe two of you. And if two of you went to this one, then you don't get to go to the next one. Somebody else has to go. There's a lot going on with this. So the LEAs, all of those kinds of guys that have the power to push, you have to know them. Also, field sales meetings are going to be really cool this next year, right? Like if you can get in the field with another partner, then you have something that will get you in front of people. And of course, Learning Council is going to recommend that you do that with us because we're the media. We can get in anywhere. And then also make sure that in the sales side, you're considering the cost of ghosting. This is really hurting sales. This loss of common courtesy. I want you to understand this other thing too, is you have to be responsible for your own karma in this area. We all know we try to ignore everything that comes in. It takes like 1 second to respond to something and go, not right now, or I'm not the one. Leave me alone. If it's not spam, like you pretty much identify spam pretty easily, or somebody that's phishing, trying to give you a virus or something like that. But common courtesy is karma. I was talking about this in Dallas last week. I said that the issue with the loss of common communications, and you guys as school districts are not talking to the vendors at all or giving them any indication why, is this. The economy runs on a sort of an electricity of communication. Communication between commercial communication between entities is the electricity that drives the economy. And if you guys completely diss everyone that's trying to talk to you all the time, then you're, it's sort of like hurting the economy. It's your role. You're supposed to talk to them. You're supposed to let them know what's going on. At least do that. And people were a little chagrined by that, but it's, I don't know who else is going to tell them that. Okay, so let's talk about leads or relationships. We've been in the mode for EdTech for a really long time to be, low level non-decision makers at conferences, except the superintendent ones, right? Versus the high impact discussions at regional meetings. And I'm saying this because that's my focus. Let's have real relationships, low relative costs, small, tiny little things don't cost you anything to get into, versus the stand at the booth and hope people wander by. I'm just telling you, the wander by thing is going to really hurt you. I'm saying that out of experience because I worked for a good 20 years for a company that owned all the big trade shows in the government sector, like, the finance guys, the police, and all those other kinds of guys. And they did the big 3 conference, well, 4 at one point, and then they started a lot of regional city level events. By the time I left there, they had killed all their big conferences because the only place people would go was the small regional ones. It was always way, way less people. And that's because as a market matures, and the education market is on a rapid maturity cycle right now, faster than I've ever seen. The pandemic did one acceleration, but this attrition and lack of teachers is doing another whole level of acceleration. They're maturing right now where it's like, who's it for this? Okay, you're the guy. There's one person. It's not like everybody go and everybody learn everything and take, umpty-ump workshops on how to use Google. That's not going to work for the leadership anymore. They'd be like, who's going? Okay, you're going to learn, then you're going to deputize, you're going to come back and teach everybody else, period, right? Because you can't afford to send everybody just for fun. So the maturity into like we're not going to do it that way anymore, I think is going to mirror what already happened in the rest of the sector. I could be wrong about that. I'm willing to be wrong about that. Education is kind of a wild beast. But I'm expecting this to happen. I've been expecting it for a long time. Okay, so Then we'll come back to all your questions if you guys questions. If you've been typing in questions, just so you know, I have been checking. So sorry about that. This is where I'm going to be in the next year, talking about learning futures, having my media meetings. These media meetings invite superintendents and chief academic officers. They come and then I video them speaking and have them on a panel. They sit at the tables and do the little research conversations that we do. I'm not going to go back to Chicago. I think I'm skipping Minneapolis. I originally had them on my 2025 plan. But when we started doing the numbers of where the money is at, we decided there's a lot of places in this country we're just going to skip. Does it make sense to go to Seattle anymore right now? Maybe next year. Does it make sense to go out to Washington or Oregon or Northern California? We were just there. But the rest of these cities that we're planning to be in for the next year, we know we're tracking money, we're tracking spend. So that's what we're going to be. The other thing is, if you haven't done it yet as a vendor, just so you know, the No Story site, which we also own, you need to make sure you create your free profile. Do not create a profile as an educator if you're a company person. Create a company agent profile and then make your group profile. Don't create your company profile or your personal one and make it look like your company one, because you won't be in the marketplace. You have to create a personal one, then your company group one. You can ask us to create a news channel for all your press. We will boost you in the news channel. We're asking a lot of companies to do that right now. And then you can create your product tiles to go in the marketplace. I just passed a huge deal to who was that, Soundtrap, for 500 pieces of their product that came in through this. So just so you know, if you're not in there, you should be in there. It's free, so you don't have to do anything for that. And we're about to add our AI calendaring button into all your product pages so that if somebody wants to schedule an appointment with you, you can have your reps marked for like which areas, and then people can just schedule an appointment so they can get a demo right there. So it'll look at their calendar. This is where the AI part comes in. Looks at their calendar, looks at your calendar, automatically sets it and sends you both the confirmation. So just so you know, you guys should be doing that. And then if you have more questions about any of these things, like what I'm doing with Learning Council News Media for the next year and what my attention will be on editorially, what I'll be doing with the Flex Learning Logistics Project, what I'll be doing with No Story, let me know. But I'm going to go back up here some of this earlier data because I know somebody's going to want to ask me questions about it. Okay, so unmute yourself if you have questions. Tell me what you think. Okay, here's what happens with vendors. You guys don't want to ask questions in front of each other.
I'm going to ask a question, Leilani. This is
Good.
Shannon. I just wanted to say what you are sharing affirms what I'm hearing in convenings of CIOs and CAOs in, as you mentioned, smaller, more intimate settings like the service. I'm in Texas, as you know, and the education service centers host quarterly meetings that allow for that interaction, and then the added advantage of being part of the Learning Council and participating in that manner allows you visibility over the course of the year. But I don't have a specific question. The only thing that I'm pondering right now is the preference of districts towards at the ready courseware versus build and design courseware, both with the opportunity to customize, because I have heard conflicting information from people in the field who are indicating we don't want build and design, we need turnkey, but yet the flexibility of customization should it be needed. And then in other camps, I hear the direct opposite. So just wondered if you've had any conversations around that. And
yeah, that's really, I think what you're looking at, the definitive line of that is, does the person talking about that have an understanding of the sheer heights that UI UX can go and what it means to be a digital designer of attention and understanding through digital that's not just digitized. So it's not just a widgety thing. It's got levels to it. I mean, I've talked to a lot of companies. I do a lot of podcasting with Lexia and Mind Research. They talk about the science of how little Gigi the penguin gets across the screen because the kid moves the right boxes so that they can show their understanding of fractions. Okay. And they'll keep getting it delivered to them in a different way until Gigi moves across the screen and they got it right. You can't do that with flat text in a lot of systems. And it's different for every age level, right? Like, but they go up to, I don't know, what, 6th grade, 8th grade or whatever, but the question of do it yourself within all of your own lesson planning is mostly a question of flat digital. It's not widgets, right? Or it's got maybe some little widgety GIFs and stuff like that, maybe some video. But the level of UI UX, that's where the market's going. The delivery and execution of something that you can manipulate, that you can be individually engaged in understanding and motion, like the AR, VR guys are doing right now. That's where the market's going to go. So that's the real question, right? And teachers will always push back. They want to deliver it themselves. But the research is now showing they realize they made a mistake doing that. They don't want to all do it themselves. They want at least a framework. Like I know, Shannon, you guys deliver really quality framework, right? Like that has a lot of stuff you can plug and play, and then they can make all their other own stuff, right? Like you have a lot of quality pieces.
Correct. Correct.
But full courseware is where I think the market's headed.
Yeah.
It's the pinnacle, right?
Yep.
Okay, so Snow White, I think you were next with a question. Thank you, Shannon. Snow White, you want to unmute?
Yes, I
see
am.
your
But Ernie was ahead of me. Go ahead,
Okay,
Ernie.
go ahead, Ernie. Hi, Ernie.
Hey there, Leilani. Wonderful presentation.
Thank
So
you.
good to hear your voice again.
Yeah, you too.
Hey, so this is fascinating, especially the emergence of homeschooling, which we're aware of. I didn't realize the size of the marketplace, which is very interesting. But the other thing that really jumps out at me is the interest in AI exposure for education. And we've kind of shifted and pivoted and have gone all in with AI from our digital literacy products to our PDs, and we actually developed a course on that for school administrators. But my question for you, our philosophy is that when it comes to AI strategy, it should start from the top and work its way down into classrooms. Meaning that a superintendent or a school site principal should kind of drive the direction and the content and the tools and the database of content that teachers and then eventually students should access. Do you agree with that? Is that kind of the direction people want, or are they letting teachers just figure it out on their own?
Question is, academic centers should drive it or let teachers figure it out on their own?
At what level do you see AI strategy and products getting the most traction, from the top, from a superintendent, from a school site leader, or from a classroom leader?
I think it has to be from the top. It has to be, because you have to hit all your standards, you have to hit all this other stuff. I think it's a very watery field, right? It's like
Yeah.
teachers want to do some customizations and et cetera, et cetera. Generative AI isn't all the way there yet. We all know. They like to use it usually like in some lesson building and that kind of stuff, which is really great. But you have
Right.
to understand the attitude of the district leaders right now, and especially the state leaders, is why are we letting every single person design every single thing? This is a nationwide inefficiency of epic proportions. It's unbelievably high. Like every single math teacher teaching fractions, they're all going to build all their own lessons. Why are we doing that? This is like crazy. So you have that issue, which is going to be a cap on AI, but AI is going to be used in more than just that way. It's not just a lesson planner, right?
Right.
But I think the sophistication of how you manage the mind and the interaction of the person learning is going to be where we all have to pay attention to. It's not the build side anymore. The cause and effect side on the student level is where we need to live, because we're losing kids. They're not coming to school. They're on a different mind track. 50% of their life is spent in digital. If we don't really grasp UI UX, like Mind Research has, and Edmentum, and Edgenuity, and all these other guys, right? Capstone, those guys, you know, they've nailed it on design. How do I engage this child? So this, you know, I mean, you can see, watch a 2-year-old. The Apple device is so wonderfully created that a 2-year-old can figure out how to navigate around. My mom can't, but my 2-year-old can, right?
Right.
If you have that level of navigation ability that will interact and cause them to go, I want to know more. I just had this history lesson. Here's all I really need to know. But why are they wearing those strange wool uniforms? Weren't they itchy in the Civil War? Poke. Oh, that's why they were using. So there's just issue, you know, what I'm saying is, how do you cause learning on their side? That all the attention over here is going to get swamped as they're losing kids. They're going to be like, why is this happening? And that's what they're going to be, they're going through that now. And I know you see that, Ernie.
I
Did
do,
that
and
answer your
that's why.
question? Did I go off on a
It,
tangent?
well, both, both, but a good tangent, because I think you're right. If we learn how to engage students better, which AI absolutely can help do that with personalization, we will get their attentions and hopefully keep more students or bring them back or retain them. But yeah, I think there's a tremendous opportunity at all levels. But yeah, I agree with you. You don't want all the teachers going out there and trying to figure it out on their own and maybe kind of do it incorrectly when it should start from the top. So I agree with you on that. And I just wanted to get confirmation, and you've provided that. Thank you so much.
Okay, good, good. All right, so Snow White.
Okay. And so, Ernie, you didn't ask me, but since I know you, I'm going to give you my 2 cents on your question.
Hey, Snow.
Hey, Ernie. Been a long time. I mean, I agree with Leilani on, you know, the policy needs to start from the top, but because they're not in the classroom and teachers are already using AI, whether there's policy or not, and I'm not saying that's right to do, but that's the reality, is they have to engage the teachers on how do they see themselves using AI and build that into the policy. And it's not just teaching and learning, but how do we even look at IT ops? Like, how do we help a CIO's job using AI? And so thinking about the holistic district and how we're going to embrace AI needs to be a district-wide conversation versus just from the top. So that's my 2 cents on your question. But I definitely think that administrators need to work fast because it's happening behind closed doors. And
Yeah.
it's just a matter of time that, you know, a teacher accidentally uses AI in a way that uploads student information. And we know then, you know, what happens then
Right.
they
Right.
shut down the internet because of that.
You know, real
oh,
quick
go ahead.
before you move on, Snow, there's an analogy I like to use. If you remember back in the days when teachers would show up with the little wireless router they bought at Staples and plugged it into
Yes.
the school network, stuff like, I mean, it caused problems, right? So I kind of see this as a modern day version of that problem. If we
Mhm.
don't have a standardization and a little bit of guidance, it could cause issues at the bottom level.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm thinking the top levels need to create urgency because it's happening, like you said already, with teachers and students.
Exactly.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I totally agree with that.
So my question though, real fast, and I know we're over time, but just seeing the your trends here and seeing that we're going to see another drop in 2025, how are districts preparing though for the Windows EOS in October? Are they having that conversation? Because I know when you talk to Microsoft, they're way behind in how many devices out there that can't even upgrade to Windows 11. So how are they? What's that conversation? Or are they having the conversation? Or is it going to be a
I can
panic?
guarantee you they're not having it at all.
So it'll just be a
I
panic in the
haven't heard that
summertime.
brought up anywhere.
That's crazy. Okay.
Yeah, and I talk to a lot of people. I get around.
Yeah.
I'm sure you do too, but I haven't heard that anywhere. I don't think Microsoft's paying much attention to it either.
No, they
You think
are.
they
They're
are?
watching the numbers. Oh yeah. I mean, they're panicking on how are we going to provide supply if because there's so many devices out there that one haven't been upgraded, but then two, it's physically impossible to upgrade to Windows 11. So the end of service is happening in October 2025. The only thing I could think of is Microsoft, which they've been known to do, is to extend the EOS. But right now they're
Yeah,
saying
they'll
they're not
probably
going to do
get
it.
begged to do that in many instances, but if I know government, every side of government that's ever been, I mean, you remember Y2K, right? Snow?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Everybody waited until the month before. Like,
Right.
so that's what's gonna go on. Then there'd be mad amounts of procurement, like at the end.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
Okay.
But yeah.
Interesting though that you haven't heard it, but yeah, it's something we're watching to see when are they going to do this refresh because
I
it's
think it's
coming.
gonna hurt Microsoft too, because there's a lot of Google movement, right?
Yes.
Like
Yeah. And some will switch to
anytime you
Google
force
too.
something on somebody, people go, I mean, a good percentage of them go, oh, we hate you now, so we're not gonna play with you anymore, so we're gonna go away, right? So,
Right.
yeah,
Right. Okay. Thanks.
yeah. Okay, anybody else? Going once, going twice, where would we end this off? Hopefully, if you have any other questions, you're gonna join our group and discuss it there. We're kind of hoping for that. But we will take this recording to make sure it goes online so people can watch it, okay? Thank you, guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay, bye, everyone.